listening to the new WCEG network on WCEGtalkradio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on Smart TV. YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Dr. Wanzo, your show host of Mind Matters for the next hour. We are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show, host, and guest, and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Good evening again. Welcome to Mind Matters, where we discuss relevant mental health issues. I'm your host, Dr. Cassandra Wanzo, a psychiatrist practicing in Atlanta for the past 30 years. Our co-host is Norman Carter Jr. He's a retired Philadelphia police corporal. He's written a book that's very relevant to our times, entitled The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon, and again, it's very timely. He also hosts his own show on WCEG, Issues and Answers, on Mondays at 4 p.m. This past Monday was quite a treat. Hi, Norman.
Hello, how are you, Doctor?
Our special guest is Miss Shavette Athouris. She's been a registered nurse for over 20 years. She was a nursing professor for 5 years at a university in Atlanta, Georgia. She's the CEO of Pyramia, which are all natural products that provide a safe alternative to alcohol-based sanitizers. She's also the administrative director for a nonprofit where they help develop and mentor youth. You can visit the website at www.theosmovement.org. Welcome, Shavette.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is our final show of the year. Our focus this evening, I wanted to end on something that was helpful or more positive. It's often this time of year we do about the Christmas blues and all of that, but I decided I wanted to do something different. So our topic this evening will be a discussion of my forever First Lady, Michelle Obama, her new book, The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. This book has everything to do about mental health and mental wellness. So for those of you who haven't read it, I highly encourage you to read it. It's not about politics. It's about self-confidence and mental health and mental well-being. Even at the end of the book, she lists resources for seeking mental health treatment. In the introduction of her book, she discusses the process of finding strength and light within yourself. She says, I believe that each of us carries a bit of inner brightness, something entirely unique and individual, a flame that's worth protecting. When we are able to recognize our own light, we become empowered to use it. When we learn to foster what's unique in the people around us, we become better able to build compassionate communities and make meaningful change. I mean, I thought that was powerful. Kind of reminds me of that song, This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine.
I was going to sing it.
So I want to ask you and the audience, what do you consider to be your inner brightness? And how do you keep that flame lit? Whoever wants to respond to that. Your inner brightness, and how do you keep the flame lit?
This is one of the parts that made me really think in her book, and there's several. but it all takes me back to when I was attending West Point Prep School during the service, and it was a huge change in atmosphere. I mean, later on in the book, she talks about being an only. Well, I was one of a few onlys, and what I found out is that I had to, in my mind, nurture this determination I had to succeed at any cost, because what had happened is that I found out then, and I hope I'm going off on a tangent, is that these were young men from all over the country. And what I found out was that even though I finished rather high in my high school class in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia school system was so far below school systems throughout the country that I was far behind these children, these young men from other parts of the country. So I had to study harder. I had to believe in myself, believe that I could accomplish the work that I needed to do, and that's what carried me through. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and I think that in life, all of us go through those challenging moments where we have to look into our inner selves and decide: do you really want this, or do you really want this? And you know, and you have to be willing to accept the challenge and not just wilt.
Exactly.
You know.
So Shavette, how do you keep your flame lit?
Well, for me, I look at, she has so many different great points throughout her book. And all of us come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. Our parents, of course, had different parenting styles, especially, according to whether you're, born in the States or you're born international, or just, it's a lot of different variances there. But for me, I was fortunate enough to have that inner brightness for me, as far as being determined, my determination, the will to want to succeed, to be all that you can be, which came from my mother.
Okay.
And I know in mentoring children and youth right now, a lot of them don't have that. So many of them oftentimes are plagued with people telling them what they can't be and what they can't do and who they won't become. But it takes something within, and if you have family members or people that are positive in lifting you up, that of course helps. But the challenge is when you don't have that. But for me, I was fortunate enough to have that and just raised with the notion of to be all that you can be.
I really liked how she talked about wherever she goes and she meets with children, that she always greets them with gladness. And she says it's very important to greet children, whether they're yours or anybody else's, with gladness, because that nourishes their inner flame. Oftentimes the kids don't have that. And like kids who were involved in the shooting on 12th Street, I'm sure they didn't have that in their lives.
Exactly.
14th Street, they didn't have that. She was saying that research shows when teachers take the time to greet the students at the door, each one, that their achievement goes up and the disruption goes down. So that greeting the children with gladness, that was something that really stuck out in me. So that's something I'm going to make sure that I incorporate anytime I see a child, to greet them with gladness. I mean, I thought that was so deep, so wonderful.
Yeah, so powerful.
Something she said that really resonated with me was when she talked about, and that's sort of what Norm was alluding to, like when people treat you like you don't belong in the space where you're in, where you're viewed as a trespasser in that space. That really resonated with me. I had tears at some parts when she was discussing that. She gave several examples. Like she gave an example of Stacey Abrams. She said, everybody who's out there, Stacey ran for governor twice, and she's a very powerful woman. And so she talks about how Stacey was named the valedictorian of her class in 1991, and she was invited to a reception at the governor's mansion to celebrate all the success of the valedictorians. So she was so excited and said that she and her parents put on their best clothes, took the bus from Decatur to go to the governor's mansion in Buckhead. Once they got to the gate, the security guard looked at them and said, "This is a private event. You don't belong here."
Wow.
So Stacy was going to just go back, but her parents, oh no, they made, and then the father argued with the guard and said to look for her name. And as it turns out, her name was on the top of the list. It was in alphabetical order. So Abrams, so she was at the top of the list. So, so then, you know, she said she doesn't remember much about that experience. The only thing that stands out in her mind is them telling her that she didn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
The Michelle Obama gives the example of her guidance counselor, which I call Miss Guidance Counselor, when she was applying to colleges and she was applying to Princeton, and the guidance counselor told her not to bother to apply because she wasn't Princeton material. Mm-hmm. So that made Michelle even all the more determined. So an example from my personal life that I've shared before, actually a couple when I was at Northwestern undergrad and medical school in Madison. So at Northwestern, I was a nutrition major, which involved all the pre-med requirements plus 6 nutrition courses. So the head of the department, her name was Mrs. White, who taught all the courses. I got all A's and B's in her class. And I told her I had planned to go to medical school. She said, "Oh no, why don't you become a dietitian?" I said, "No, I want to go to medical school." I had a friend who was a white female. When I mentioned that to her, she said, "You know what? I want to be a dietitian. And she's been telling me I should go to medical school." So,
wow.
I mean, that was, so she's telling you, my friend, that. And so, but then it goes on, it gets worse. So since I had received all A's and B's in her classes and I had 6 classes from her, I asked her to write my recommendation for medical school. So I went on several interviews. It wasn't until I was at Howard University Medical School where the person who was the interviewer told me, "You really need to see this." So she showed me the recommendation that Mrs. White had written. I will never forget this. It's burned and etched in my mind. It said about me, "She does not possess the native intelligence to pursue medical school."
Wow.
Wow.
She does not possess the native intelligence to pursue medical school. That's the recommendation that she, I mean, I was really shocked. When I got back, I mean, I still had classes with her and I never said anything to her directly. But once I was graduating from medical school, I sent her an invitation to my medical school graduation.
Wow, good for you.
Success is the greatest revenge.
Yes, it is.
So Michelle talks a lot about being different and being the only, and when she says, no matter what you achieve, there will always be people who will accuse you of having taken shortcuts and being unworthy of what you have achieved. When I was in medical school, there were 3 of us out of 163 Black out of 160. I actually had classmates who came up to my face and said, "You're only here because of affirmative action." I mean, they actually came up to my face and said that. So wow. What Mrs. Obama says, because I did let it get in my head. She says, "Don't listen. Don't let that poison inside." But in my case, I did that. But she said, I wish don't listen. Don't let the poison inside. So
yeah, it's I can always go back to my tenure at West Point Prep School, and I had a little struggle with trigonometry. Oh, terrible! But and I was at the point where, you know, I believed that I couldn't do this, but finally at some point, I took up tutoring, and I got it. And it was like the little light bulb went off. And when we took the final examination, I got a B+. Wow. in the examination, and it was amazing because I'm running up and down this barracks, which is about 50 yards long, and I'm yelling and screaming and jumping up and down, and everybody's wondering, "What are you yelling about?" And I said, "I got a B+, a B+," and they went, "A B+?" I said, "Yes, it's a big thing." But the whole thing of it is again, going back to believing in yourself and never giving up, never giving up, because life presents us with so many excuses to fail. I got into this recently, maybe a little bit different, about voting. There were people who just threw up their arms in disgust when the state said, there was no voting on Saturday. Oh, that's the end of the world. No, it's not the end of the world. Why do you accept defeat so easily? There are other options. Take advantage of the options that you have. Plan. And some of us are just too quick to take on that defeat. And she talks later on about putting that armor on you, and that's what you have to do. To prevent those slings and arrows that are coming at you, telling you you're not good enough, you're not worthy. Your hair's too nappy.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is where she said, because when her father had MS and he would often fall as his condition, was getting worse, and he had to have a cane. One of my favorite quotes that she says is, "You fall down, you get up, you carry on." I love that. You fall down, you get up, you carry on.
Yeah.
And then what was also interesting about that, Doc, is where when she talks about her father having MS, and even though he would fall down and he would get back up, he had such determination and will to keep going, to do or to cook a meal or to do different things, even though he had just fallen down, where so many people would get tired and give up.
Exactly.
He just dusted off the dirt and kept on going, Yeah. And I thought that was really good in the book as well. But it's like it almost brings tears to your eyes when you think about so many people in the world who have dealt with, at some point in their lives, people telling them who they are, who they're not, who and what they will and they won't become. I dare them.
Yeah.
Who are they to say, what you will become? And it takes about 40 positives to override one negative.
Yeah.
So if someone hears something negative, it takes about 40 times of them hearing something positive just to override that one negative.
Wow. Like she says, don't listen. Don't let the poison inside. Don't listen. Don't let the poison inside. I had to write that down. Absolutely. Another something that she said that I liked: no one can make you feel bad if you feel good about yourself.
That's right.
Yeah, that's another quote. Yeah.
That's all about being resolute. But that comes with time. It doesn't start instantly. And I think that's something that has to be nurtured and taught, through parenting and whatnot. I know one of the first lessons that my parents taught me was, nobody is better than you. I mean, that was 5 or 6 years old. It sticks out in my head. And I carry that with me all through my life. There are people who will have different opportunities than you've had because of I was born poor, but that doesn't make them better.
Exactly.
And or doesn't guarantee their success. I knew people who were who I grew up with, born far better off than I, and who had nervous breakdowns, or in one case tried to commit suicide. It has nothing to do with economic levels, and I think that's what Ms. Obama was talking about, where people say to her, "Well, you've made it. You've got this. You've got that." Rich folks go into depression all the time.
And like she talked about, after leaving the White House and seeing what a mess, Trump was making, and the pandemic, that she herself suffered from a low-grade depression. She did admit that. That's why I love the fact in this book that she is very open and very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. I like
that. Yeah. She did a nice interview on Stephen Colbert, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, where she talked about her hair, where she actually had her hair in cornrows. And she said she always wanted to do that while she was in the White House, but she couldn't because of the pressures around her, and that was something that would not be acceptable. I mean, you don't want to go in there looking like a revolutionary. I guess that's what I guess that's what her thinking is, because you have to appeal to so many people, and so you have to put on this false face over top of your armor, and carry on, but never lose sight of who you are. And I think that's something, the theme of her book.
I remember in terms of the hair, like I did my, after medical school, then I did my residency in psychiatry in New York, in the Village, which the Village, New York is supposed to be, a very liberal place, but the hospital I was at, St. Vincent's, was a Catholic hospital, very rigid, and the head of the hospital was a nun. My first day, July 1st, I will never forget that. We're in an assembly. She walks up to me, because I had braids at the time. I had braids. I had the braids with the beads, kind of like the Serena Williams type. And she walked straight to me and told me that I had to change my hairstyle because it didn't fit. I was like, what? She told me the first day that I had to change my hairstyle because it didn't fit. I said, well, I guess I don't fit for that matter. So that was July, August. I mean, I got all kinds of flack about it. I had, we had like supervisors who would give us evaluations. I mean, one particular supervisor, an Italian woman, in my evaluation, she put, her hair is primitive. Like in my evaluation,
on an actual evaluation,
right? My hair was primitive, and no matter, I was like fighting an uphill battle. I mean, it was just one. At one point, I considered suing, but everybody was giving me flack about my braids. I was the only Black female physician in the whole hospital at the time. There were no other Black female physicians. And then finally, in November of that same year, this was 1979. No, 79. The movie 10 came out with Bo Derek.
Yes.
With the
braids.
Yes.
Year.
Then all the white women in the hospital, doctors, residents, came up to me. Where can I get that done? It's so chic. So it went from being primitive to chic in a matter of months.
Yeah. Bo Derek. How quickly we forget.
Yeah. Then it was all of a sudden became chic. It was primitive a few months ago. Now it was chic. So
I think afros went the same route, coming back. Yeah.
But that, I think she talks about some of that when she talks about the code switching, how in order to get by, we change our behavior, our appearance, our manner of speaking in order to fit into the culture of the workplace, and how that's stressful, having to fit into certain standards and code switch, be a certain way at work and then be a certain way when you're home or yourself. I don't know what your experiences have been with that.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that she talks about too in the book, is when Barack first mentioned to her that he wanted to run for president. Those were a lot of the thoughts that were in her mind as far as what that would look like, the things they'd have to go through. If he were elected, but then she followed up saying, yes, okay, you can run. But now that she's no longer, in the White House, he's done his terms, she's able to really, get more to, I guess, a sense of normalcy, be herself a little bit more, even though, you do have to at times wear that, false sense of who you are around other people or certain people, but she's kind of been able to kind of let go a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed she didn't wear cornrows for her book cover. Quite noticeable. Yeah.
Yes.
She talks
merchandise.
Talks about the fear and the fearful mind and her fearful mind, and how when Barack was running, that if she had said no, then that could have changed the whole course of history. Because at that time she was fearful of what effect it would have, fear of change, but she didn't let her fear get in the way of him running. But she said often we do that. Fearful mind is always there. What did she say? The fearful mind.
Well, she said a lot of times people are so fearful. They're fearful of changing jobs. Right. They're fearful of moving to a different state. They're fearful of so many things. And she talks about how fear can be normal. It's a normal reaction to be anxious or fearful. Exactly. But, just talking about, overcoming that, whatever fears that you have.
Yeah, she talks about it being the steering wheel that can change the course of your life.
Right.
Fear.
Yeah.
Right.
She said his whole function is to rehearse catastrophe, scare you out of opportunity, and throw rocks at your dreams.
And she said a lot of times the things that you're fearful of, oftentimes those are the very things that are life-changing events for you.
Exactly.
Yep.
that helps you to become a better you, but you just don't realize it at the moment because that fear steps in the way.
Exactly.
But once you cross that hurdle and you get over that fear and you do it, you move to that new city or state where you may not know anyone because, you know, you got a good job offer, or you know, whatever it is that you decide to do and you say yes to, you know, how oftentimes that ends up transforming your life and really helping you to be a better you and go in just such a better direction. But that fear kind of holds us back sometimes.
Exactly.
And we even get so used to being complacent, you know, with where we are, you know, comfortable with where you are. You know, you don't like change.
Right.
But change is necessary.
Yeah, I know that's something in my life that I've had to really deal with, because I'm the person, I like security. I like things to be the same. I'm a creature of habit. So that's something that I'm constantly fighting with, the change, because of my natural tendency is to stay the same, secure, stay in the same job, same house, same whatever, take the same route. I mean, I'm just a creature of habit because that's more comfortable. So that change is something that, I have worked on and still need to work on, that fear of change.
Well, what I do too is in some of my teachings, I tell people, you know, just do something different whenever you can, whether that's every day or every other day. So even when you're driving home and your brain is so used to the same exact route, take a different route intentionally, so that you kind of change up that brain and the way that it's structured to get used to change, to get used to something different, a different route. You kind of, it's like you mess up your brain, but you're straightening out your brain, if that kind of makes sense.
Yep, I do the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even in your home, you know, you may want to you know, rearrange furniture in a room just to have a different look, you know, a different feel, so your brain can start seeing something different.
It's like when you go out to events now, what a lot of people do is when you do the seating arrangements, they tell you don't sit next to someone you know. Sit next to, you know,
and they do
it takes
that
you out of your
intentionally.
it takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
But it also opens you up to different conversations, which can be very productive.
Yes.
You know, it's like when I go to, you know, certain restaurants, I'll go to the same restaurant over and over. And, you know, when I go there, the way I already knew what I was ordering the same thing. Oh, you want this, and this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm that predictable. Yeah, but I always ordered the same thing, and I already knew exactly what I wanted, how I wanted it fixed. Because I'd always order the same thing at the restaurant.
That's your comfort zone.
Yeah. So that's something for me that I have to do to try to break out of.
Try some different restaurants.
Yeah. Stop going to McDonald's.
So many areas that she covered in here. Let's see. One of the things that she was interesting concept when she talked about her kitchen table. There's the people beyond my family whom I trust, delight in, and rely on most, and for whom I would do anything. She said the kitchen table is where you can scream, yell, cuss, cry. It's a place to lick your wounds, replenish your strength. Your kitchen table is where you go for oxygen so that you can breathe again. So who do you consider your kitchen table? Either one of you.
I don't know. I found that very interesting because where she talks about how when she and her brother were young and they would sit at the table, they were free to be open and speak their mind. And I came from a totally different environment. I mean, I tried to speak my mind a couple of times and just got shut down. So yeah. So of course, when I became older, I realized that, but that was a huge error. So trying not to repeat that to my children. But yeah, I found that to be very, very interesting. That because she was brought up that way, she was able to keep that going in her adult life. And that's important. That's important because we talk about people repressing their inner selves and afraid to let it out, and that can be counterproductive.
It's interesting how she talked about her siblings, how her mother, not her family, but her mother's family. I think there were like 9 of them, and how like when company would come over, they would all have to sit on the couch, not move, not talk.
Yes.
And there was that glass table that they couldn't touch, and you know, and how she talks about it's important for parents to know what's precious, what's important. Not kids should be seen and not heard, not certain things you can't touch. That wasn't really what's important in terms of raising children.
Right.
You're gonna say something.
Right.
Were you gonna say something about the kitchen table? Did that analogy resonate with you at all?
Yeah, and then for me, I come from a place of where I'm an only child.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so for me, it was internalizing a lot. You know, not being vocal because I didn't have siblings there with me. I had my mom that I could talk to, but it was oftentimes, you know, just internalizing everything and not being open. So even now in my 50s, you know, I sometimes struggle with that. Just, you know, and my husband, I have an awesome husband to where he's, you know, still trying to get me out of that shell or that wall that sometimes we build. We build walls to protect ourselves from past hurt, past pain.
Right.
So the wall is there. So when something happens, you know, you feel like if the wall is there, it's not, you know, going to impact you as much. So that's something else that people may be dealing with. But as far as the kitchen table, even if it's not your kitchen table, I find it where if you have you know, pick a spot in your home, whether that's the corner chair in a particular room or whatever, where you can just go relax, breathe, you know, reflect, and or have some quiet time, scream or whatever it is that you like to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that screen takes me back to a friend of mine who was a terminal cancer patient. Didn't know she was terminal then, but there was a lot of anger, and she felt that she couldn't let the anger out, and it really, really bothered her. And so I said one thing that would be helpful. I said, just go stand at the top of your stairs and scream. Just let it out. And she felt much better. it really, those inhibitions, once you get them out, they make you feel liberated. And then you're able to confront or deal with whatever issue that you have. And because repressing your fears or your desires, it just leads to more and more problems. It just leads to problems.
So it's like a catharsis. Otherwise, those emotions build up like a volcano and can erupt. So I guess they can call it primal scream. It's like let it all out.
Yeah, and then the thing, if you don't let it out, you know, those are times where you see somebody that's done something that they normally would not have done. You know, whether they took frustrations out and grabbed the gun and shot and killed somebody, or you know, crash the car, you know, just whatever, it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. So it is best to, you know, do it in other ways that are
or slap somebody at the Oscars.
Yes.
Like, slap at the Oscars. Yeah, that was built up anger and rage right there. So you won't have moments like the Oscars. Right? Let the screams out in other ways.
What I wanted to ask you, since you're both married, she talks about how that she couldn't be everything for Barack and he couldn't be everything for her, and it was important to have support system friendships because they couldn't be everything for each other. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Oh, absolutely. I sort of had that discussion with my wife this past week. That the need to have someone who's not me. That you really that where you can just, like, whatever it is, just let it out. Someone that you trust, of course, but where you can just, you know, have those cathartic moments. It's helpful, or just to hear another voice, another twist of an opinion, evaluating your own goals or ideals. someone you can trust, as opposed to someone who you think might just be placating you, as my wife accuses me all the time. Oh, you're just trying to be nice. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But it helps to have that trusted voice outside of your partner.
What are your thoughts about that, Shavette?
Well, I guess for me, like I said, me being the only child, I don't, I internalize a lot, and I'm still working on that. So for me, I don't have, someone like that I just call and talk to is like that. I talk to God and, deal with things internally, and, or I go to him and, he has helped me through, so much throughout our marriage. But I haven't gotten there yet. We've been together for many, many years, but maybe that's something I need to try, Norm.
Well, I don't know. You bring up a good point about going to your war room.
Yeah.
Again, that's a cathartic experience. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I get a lot of my answers and, direction.
Okay. I thought it was really interesting, some of her ideas on parenting, which came from her mother. Like in one of the chapters, she talks about how it says she lists, I think it was 4 or 5 principles, and the first one was to have your child wake themselves up. That was something kind of new to me. So for her parents, so they gave her alarm clock, and she had to wake her own self up, not the parents coming and dragging them out of bed, but having them to wake them, to have their own alarm clock to set it so that they would have power and control over their lives. I thought that was interesting. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
That was my upbringing.
Yeah, you had to wake your own self up.
I had my own little alarm clock because I had a paper route, so I had to get up 5 o'clock every morning. Yeah.
And then she even talked about her mom making her walk to school by herself.
Yes.
And how she was so afraid and she was so fearful, and how in the world could my mother, at the young age that she was, have her walk to school by herself. But, she said she got to the first block or two and was like really afraid, but then she just looked back and kept going like, okay, I can do this. But even in her, well into her adulthood now, she looks back on that and says how that shaped her.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. So I'm looking back now. When I read that, I thought about my own experience, because I don't know, then we had like 4-year-old kindergarten. So I started, kindergarten at 4. And I remember, I have a vivid memory, the first day when I went, I got lost. We lived 2 blocks from school, but when I got to school, instead of going 2 blocks towards the house, I went 2 blocks in the opposite direction. And I remember vividly standing on the corner, just crying. And someone said, "You lost, little girl." And then after that, my mother hired somebody to take me to school. So now I wish maybe like I would have had the experience where I could have, navigated and found, my way. Because now I have problems now with navigating and finding my way to getting lost at that early age. So.
Well, here's what's funny. My husband and I, together we have 7 boys, right? And 2 of them, we would take to school every day and pick them up every day from school. And, a lot of times we'd say, okay, you didn't say thank you, and they felt like, oh, yeah, whatever. So we got to where he said, honey, you got to let them walk to school. And it's probably a good 15-minute walk, right? 20-minute walk. And the first time I told them you're walking to school, they looked at me as if I was crazy. So they ended up walking to school. But after about a week, they were like, Mom, it's hot. Can you take us? And now, at that point, one day it was pouring raining. So I took them so they wouldn't have to be soaking wet when they got to school. But it made them be so appreciative, of being dropped off and picked up. And now they didn't take us for granted.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to take things away. Absolutely.
I like how she said that they have to learn to struggle and make mistakes so they can learn to be self-sufficient. That you can't do everything for them and overprotect them. That they have to learn how to make mistakes themselves.
Yeah, I've seen that up close and personal, where you can overprotect your children, and then they become adults and have no good survival skills. Critical thinking that doesn't exist because they're so used to having people think for them. And yeah, it's a problem for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Another thing that she mentioned under parenting was parent the child you got. In other words, take into consideration that each child is unique in their individual reactions. I don't know if you got the point where Malia and Sasha, she was trying to get them to come downstairs, turn the TV off, brush their teeth, and they just like ignoring her. So she finally went and told them, I give up. I'm not going to be your mother anymore. I give up. Whereas the older child, Malia, she went and did what she was supposed to. And the other kid said, Sasha, she thought it was great. She went and turned the TV on and had a good time. She was glad that the mother wasn't. How they both had different responses to what she said. So know what each individual child and treat them as an individual. I only have one child, so I don't know what it's like to have different children.
Yeah, there's subtleties and differences in each child. Yes, you treat them all the same, you do, but there's each child has their own little personality, and you really have to know and understand that. Therefore, the whole punishment and reward system is knowing that in each child is important.
Yeah, and they're different. Each one is very different. Even out of our 7 boys, they're all, have their subtle differences. And you're exactly right, Norm. They all have their own individual personalities, and how you deal with one. As far as discipline, you may not can do that the same way with this one.
Right.
It's different. It varies.
So you learn that just by observing their behavior and their interactions.
It's all about paying attention.
Yep.
Yeah, that one size fits all, doesn't work.
No, not with the kids.
Not
at all.
Yeah, I know some kids, their parents first, when I grew up with, their parents first means of discipline was to go grab a belt and start wailing. And those children built up a tolerance for that. And they became problematic adults. It doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
It really doesn't work for everybody. As my daughter once told me, Dad, I'd rather for you to beat my butt than to sit there and talk to me, because you never ever stop. But that was the punishment. I would sit and talk, and I would go on and on about the error of her ways, whatever they might be. Now, 15, 20 years later, she complimented me for that. But, it wasn't about doing anything physical. It was just about knowing which buttons to push. And that takes understanding and knowing your child.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes I had to, if I did something wrong, I had to go in the living room and kneel down and pray. And if I got up too soon, God didn't hear you. That was too fast. You have to go right back in there, get back on your knees, because whatever you said, he did not hear you. Go back in there and get on your knees. Right.
Yeah.
But every child is different. Every child is so different.
Yes, someone just asked the question, how does this book compare to Becoming? That's an interesting question.
Now that one, I don't know, because that book was Becoming, and the cover says Overcoming.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think like overcoming in uncertain times. So it was
correct.
Because of what happened during the pandemic, with the change, with Trump becoming president, all the different changes, all the uncertain times and the obstacles. So I think this one is more of a challenge on how, to be resilient, how to cope, how to find that light, those inner strengths within you, how to find your toolbox of habits and things to help you cope. So this one, I think, helps you cope more with things, what's going on in your life, in the world. So I actually found this one much more helpful and resonated more with this one. I mean, they both were excellent books, but this one especially, I resonated more with in terms of how to, like I said, cope with what's going on in the world.
And I think also that's important is no matter what your, and I put this in quotes, status might be, we all of us have stuff that we've gone through that have made us the people that we are. Some negative, some positive. But those life lessons are what prepare you to deal with the uncertainties that may come up in your life. I think that's what this book is about. It's about finding that inner strength and within yourself to press on.
And nourishing it in others, like little children, like nourishing it in children, and being glad to see them the brightness and fueling their flames, the children.
I think a good lesson is the little birds, little pigeons. I may have said this before, that when they're breaking out of the shell, they have to struggle to get out of that, to break that shell. That's a struggle for them. But if you assist in breaking that shell open, that bird will not survive, because that's like their first struggle, their first bit of problem solving, and it makes them stronger. So that old saying about if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Just going through struggles and little struggles and big struggles, they just prepare you. They're your personal life lessons. What did we call that? That's your receipt or something like that. Someone said that before. That's your receipt. Yeah. I've been through this. Yeah.
I got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those that have children, we as parents, oftentimes, like she was saying in the book, we want to protect them. We want to do things for them and, shield them and hide them from not necessarily the world, but protect them from so much that we know can happen. But, oftentimes we end up doing them harm, because if we think about it, the real world that we all live in order for them to really be able to cope in this big world, it's like there's certain things that have to happen along the way. Like you said, sometimes they have to learn from their own mistakes, or, in order to be able to, on the other side of it and going into young adulthood to adulthood, just be able to survive and cope and not get to the point to where it's such a shocker now that they're trying to be independent and on their own. And when they get a taste of the real world, we have to allow certain things to happen when they're home, with you before they graduate and they leave home, so that they can survive, so that they won't get in the real world and want to commit suicide because they can't handle the stresses of life, or, they can't handle what's being thrown at them. Yeah. But it's hard as a parent, because you want to hold them, protect them.
Right.
I'm going to shield you from that and don't even let you see it, because we know what that road is, but it's difficult.
Sometimes that black eye is your first lesson in conflict resolution. I mean, it happens. I think that's one of the lessons that a lot of parents aren't teaching children today. Conflict resolution, and absent that, you have a situation like the 12-year-old boy that got killed the other day. Knowing when to walk away, knowing when to go get out of the crowd. Don't follow the crowd. Those are life-saving tools. And when children don't know that, when they feel that their only way is to act a certain way, that can be fatal.
Exactly.
That can be fatal. So what's a shame we can't have a children's version of this book.
Oh.
with the children. Yeah. But that's it.
Someone asked the question, if you got the chance to ask Michelle one question, what would it be?
Repeat the question.
That if you had the chance to ask Michelle one question, what would that be?
I have to think about that one.
For me, I think the only thing I would ask her is if you had to do it over again, is there anything in your life that you would change? I guess I would ask her that. If she had to do it over again, is there anything that she would change?
Probably not. Can you imagine if she had changed her life course? Can you imagine?
The fear stand in the way and told the Barack not to run, that would have definitely changed the whole course of history.
Right.
She talks about that.
So her decisions were historical.
Exactly.
Yeah. She was the right person at the right time. She was the right image for that office at that time. I dare say that if there were people, if you remember back, who were really hinting that maybe she should take a run and be the first female president. She was universally, everybody didn't, but she was universally loved and respected. And I think the whole respect issue is extremely important. Extremely important, and there are lessons for everybody in that book.
So I went to her first book tour, Becoming, and someone asked, who was the host? I think it was Gail King, asked her about would she run. She absolutely positively said she would not run. She would not put herself through it. She would not put her family through it. And there's no way. She was like very adamant that she would not run. Right. That was one of the things she said during that tour. That book was sold out. She had the Becoming. She was in 20-some cities, and each city was sold out.
Yeah, I know. To get it here at the library, there was a several weeks waiting list to get it at the library here.
The book
in Gwinnett County. Yes.
Oh, yeah. She had the tour. Didn't you attend the tour? It was at I don't know, one of the big arenas downtown. It was like sold out. Her tour, I think, it was for a couple of days, but each one was sold out. And she is having a tour for this too. I think it's at the Fox now, but I think the tickets are like $400 or $500 or something like that.
Yeah. I'll watch her on TV.
I read the book. For those of you who haven't read the book, I highly, highly encourage you to read the book. It's not about politics, as I said. It's about self-care and self-confidence and self-love and mental health. Someone asked, what should one do if it all becomes too much? Like at the end of the book, she even lists resources for mental health. So if it's too much, then seek treatment, talk to someone. That's what you need to do. If it all becomes too much, seek treatment. Let me see. Is it suicide? Let's see, what is it? 988 now, the new suicide helpline is 988 if you have thoughts of wanting to die or hurt yourself. But if it becomes too much, seek help, talk to someone. Like I said, there's no shame in seeking help. It's a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness.
And I think that one thing we should be cautioned about is that when we talk about depression doesn't always lead you to suicide. It can just lead you to be a lot less productive than what you should be. Shutting yourself up in a dark room, not reaching out and interacting with other people. Those type of things, or building this shell around yourself. Those types of things, they just allow you to basically vegetate, which isn't healthy, and it shouldn't happen. So having that voice that you can talk to, even if it's just going to your war room and talking to the man upstairs, as long as you listen. Yeah.
And then too, if you don't talk to someone, oftentimes it can foster in your health.
Mhm.
You know, you can start having certain health issues from the stresses of it all. So many different medical things that can go wrong, all because of, you know, keeping things inside or not talking to someone or talking it out, or, you know, getting over that life stressor of where you are right now, getting over to the other side. It can definitely affect your health. So you definitely want to talk to someone.
Absolutely.
She said, someone asked, what is low-grade depression? Well, it's depression, but I guess it's not to the point where you're wanting to, you know, die or kill yourself, but where you probably have lost interest in things and, you know, either oversleeping, overeating, or not sleeping or not eating, but it's still a depression all the same, but it's not as acute with maybe the seriousness of the suicidal thoughts, but it's still depression nonetheless.
When getting out of the bed is work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And sometimes they may even lose interest in things that they once enjoyed to do.
Exactly.
Kind of lose interest in those things.
Yeah. Wow. So again, so those who haven't read the book, I highly encourage. I'm going to read this one quote that really stood out to me. It's kind of long, but she says, at some point, life will inevitably complicate any dream, whether it's breaking into a certain professional field, performing on a big stage, or making meaningful social change. The limits come pretty quickly into view. Obstacles crop up, naysayers emerge, unfairness clutters the road. Practical concerns will often assert themselves. Money gets tight, time grows short. The trade-offs become numerous, and they are often plainly necessary to make. Ask anyone who's gotten themselves even partway to where they want to go. Getting to where you want to go at some point will almost by necessity start to feel like a fight. That's when agility starts to really matter. You have to begin playing both offense and defense at the same time, pushing yourself forward while also doubling back to guard your resources, advancing toward your goals without fully draining your strength. It can get complicated quickly. You will need to armor up as well. If you want to break barriers and knock down walls, I've found, you will need to find and protect your own boundaries, watching over your time, your energy, your health, and your spirit as you go. The world turns out to be full of lines and limits, some of them difficult to cross, some of them necessary to cross, and some of them better off exploded altogether. Many of us spend full lifetimes trying to discern which we cross and which we don't. The point is that nobody survives a hero's journey undefended. The challenge in leading a big life becomes trying to find ways to protect your dreams and your drive, to remain tough without being overly guarded, to stay nimble and open to growth, allowing others to see you for who you are. It's about learning how to shelter your flame without hiding its light.
Yay. I like that.
Awesome. I love it. I love it.
So again, I highly, highly encourage you to get this book and to read it. It really is worth it. I highly, highly recommend it. Any last closing words for either that you have?
Yeah, we can get her to replace Dr. Phil. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Phil. Oh.
That would be a great show.
Yeah. Dr. Oz, both of them were worthless.
Really, truly, truly, truly.
You have any last words?
Good job.
No, that was it. I just recommend getting the book, and it's, you know, definitely different from what I thought that it would be. You know, it's definitely motivational.
What you thought it was going to be more political? Or?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be political, and it's totally not. Totally not. So get the book. Yeah, it's not. Very encouraging.
Exactly.
And uplifting.
And Norm, do you have any?
No, it just took me back, as I had mentioned earlier, it took me back over different portions of my life. And seeing like obstacles that I had to overcome, and some obstacles I didn't. You know, and sometimes I wish that I had put a little more effort into some of those obstacles that I let sort of deter me from moving in a certain direction. So there's just a bunch of life lessons that are easily applied for everyone, no matter what your economic level is, no matter your background, no matter your racial background or anything. There's good information in here for everybody.
Yes.
I wish a pleasant evening, a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening.